A teacher is drawn into a dangerous game of desire when Benny, her enigmatic 17-year-old student, joins her class. As their professional boundaries blur, a fierce battle of wills and forbidden passions ensues, testing the limits of them both. The movie starts with a woman, Lana, playing with her daughter and her husband while lying in bed in the morning. They're touching her back trying to guess the animal, and when she refuses to turn around, he ends up tickling her, which gets her to flinch. Lana goes running in the woods all by herself that morning, and she gets to a lake while she's extremely tired. She takes a breather as she is about to get to work. Lana is a teacher at a high school, and she makes her way through the halls while the students are doing their own thing. She gives her students a surprise test, and as she hands the paper one at a time, she tells them to be careful with the questions because they are tricky. She tells them to begin, and she sits down at her desk to do her work. But she notices the new student, Benny, not even trying to do the test. He is only staring at her while she sits there. She finally sees him looking at her, but decides to ignore him at first. She keeps looking up to see him, but he hasn't stopped staring at her. Later, Lana is at her daughter's school to pick her up, and she carries her while they talk about their day to the car. She puts her in the car and gets in herself. That's when she notices Benny walking his dog and playing with him, and she stares for a moment, but when her daughter talks to her, she starts the car's engine to go home. Back in class, Lana is watching over a boy giving a presentation when some female students are giggling and laughing while looking at their phones. She firmly tells them to stop what they're doing, so they put the phone down, and the presentation continues. The girls still laugh, so Lana takes their phone from them, and one of the girls, Valerie, insults her, which angers her, so she confronts the student, and the other kids are enjoying the show as the two argue. Lana has no choice, so she sends the girl to the principal's office. All of this is being watched by Benny, who seems uninterested in all of the drama. Later, as Lana is preparing some tea for herself, she looks out of the window to see Benny with the girl student from before, and he is taking her bag and dumping it onto the street and throwing her bike too. Almost like he is defending her honor by bullying the girl. She later talks about Benny with another teacher, Lara, in the teacher's lounge. Lara thinks he's a good kid, but then Lara mentions that he weirdly stares at her, and that is something new to Lara because that doesn't happen in her class, so Lana just dismisses it. Later in the hallway, Lana finds Benny, who is headed to town, but she wants to talk to him, so she brings him into her classroom. He sits down and they start having a conversation, but he doesn't want to be here and wants her to cut to the chase. She is concerned about his behavior with other kids because she saw him bullying Valerie. All she wants is to help him, and she accidentally puts her hand on his lap while she talks, and that raises his attention because he thinks she likes him. She is genuinely concerned about him because he is one of the lowest scoring students in the previous exam. He doesn't seem to care, so she just tells him to think about his future more and leaves. Back at home, Lana is checking the reports of her students when she comes across Benny's profile. She was looking when her daughter came in looking for dinner. She sends her away and keeps looking at his profile. Later, as she is jogging as usual, she gets tired at the lake once again. She stares at it intently but needs to be at work. She has just finished her class and all the students have packed up and left. That's when she notices that Benny has left his bag in class. She picks it up, opens it, and finds his shirt inside. In a moment of weakness, she decides to smell it, but quickly stops herself and puts the shirt back. She then decides to go to the bathroom to calm herself down. She has a drink at the sink, but when she gets back up, she finds Benny right next to her. He wastes no time and attacks her body, and she initially doesn't resist, but stops him because this is very wrong. He tells him he is a child and this can never happen again, and walks out of the bathroom. Later that night, she is lying next to her husband, but can't get the thought of Benny out of her mind. Back in school, she is still stealing glances at him as he sits arrogantly at his desk and looks at her. She can't help but look at him too, lingering her stare more and more. She was later walking down the hall when he suddenly started walking next to her. He is bold and even asks to see her after school, but she immediately refuses. They get to a private spot on the stairs, and after waiting for some teachers to walk away from them, she tells him that she doesn't want this and that he should forget everything. The day is over, and as she walks to her car, she notices that someone has broken her side mirror. She tries to look around for the person responsible, but can't seem to find anyone. She then goes to pick up her daughter as usual, and she takes her away while she is playing with a friend. They walk over to the car when she notices a group of younger boys and thinks one of them is Benny, but it turns out she is wrong. She is later working on her plants when her husband shows up to ask about what happened to her car. She lies and tells him that she drove too close to a lamppost and hit it herself. He doesn't believe the story, but leaves her to her work. She is back in class and gives the students an assignment to work on writing a cover letter for a job application. She tells them all the necessary information that they will need to write the letter. Some of the students have questions, and one of them is Benny. She tries to ignore him, but he persists with his asking. She finally gives him a chance, and he makes fun of her by suggesting she got her job by sleeping with the director. The students go wild at the boldness of his statement. She doesn't like the way he talks to her, so she sends him to the principal's office, but not before he gets another dig at her among the students. And that angers her. She takes his bag, throws it out, and tells him one more time to leave. But the students are now against her and throw something at her. This is too much for her, and she just leaves the class. The next day, she is jogging down her familiar route in the woods when she realizes that she's lost. She looks around, but doesn't remember where she is. She's alone and hears something rattling, and she decides to just run off from the area. Back home, she is reading a storybook to her daughter when the phone keeps ringing. She finally decides to answer it, but there is no one on the other line, and they just hang up, leaving her confused. And the phone rings again, and that's when she realizes that someone is messing with her. She just disconnects the phone and tells her daughter that the phone is broken. Lana later goes to work and hears the students talking loudly. Even before she gets to class, she notices Benny sitting alone, not talking to anyone, and she takes a moment to compose herself and decides to go back down the hall and tell the receptionist that she isn't feeling well and can't teach today. She gets the permission and leaves the school. She gets back home and is making some food with her husband, and she lies and tells him that she's been at school all day. She even adds details like talking to the school board about her evaluations. They continue to talk as they cook. Later on, she takes her daughter to school but doesn't go to work. She is near the river as she eats an apple in the quiet and windy part of town. She later goes to an art museum and looks at some photos on the wall. She feels like someone is watching her, and when she turns, she finds Benny behind her. She goes down the stairs to get away from him, but he is following her everywhere she goes. She starts to get nervous, and he eventually gets close to her, but she leaves him to go down the stairs again. He's beaten her to it and is looking for her, so she goes back up and takes the elevator, but he stops it at the last second and gets inside with her alone. He misses her and starts to touch her, making her feel a little excited. Later, in her car, Lana is thinking about what she just did with her student while she sees her husband and daughter ride in on their bikes. Her daughter is playing on the trampoline. Lana watches her and offers to get her husband something to drink, but she sits down to talk to him. She tells him about a weird dream she had about her and her daughter. It was a weird dream that starts with her having a gentle swim, but then gets sucked into the water and she drowns. She is later having her usual run in the woods when she comes across that same lake again, but this time she decides to throw a pebble at it. She stares for a bit and keeps going. She is finally back at school and is walking down the hall when she finally gets to the teacher's lounge, and now she's looking for something. She looks around and finds some keys. She uses them to open the confidential file cabinet and finds what she was looking for, tests that are printed out for the upcoming big final. She takes one and puts it in her bag and quickly locks the cabinet and walks out like nothing happened. She then goes over to the students' lockers and finds Benny's jacket and quietly puts the exam paper she just stole into his pocket. She gets back home and looks at her husband, who just finished showering. He tries to kiss her and she likes it. Back at work, Lana is talking to some of her colleagues when she sees Benny getting detained for stealing the test. She has a smile on her face and she continues to talk to her co-workers. Lana is later swimming in the cold lake with her husband, and she decides to dive, but when she gets out, no one is around her, and she is panicking when he scares her. This was all just a dream, and she woke up in her bed. She calms down, but still can't get the thought of Benny out of her head, even when she tries to sleep. The next day in class, she notices the empty seat left by Benny, and she somehow misses him, and is starting to regret her actions. She keeps picturing his arrogant smile and all the naughty things that they've done together. She imagines finally kissing him, but the bell rings, waking her up from her daydream. Later, Lana's daughter was playing in the library when Lana came to show her a gift she wanted to give to someone. Her daughter wants to get the little bear for herself, but they're here just to get the gift. The little girl asks over and over again, but when Lana refuses, the little girl shouts at her mom, who's nervous about catching any unwanted attention. Lana just gets up and leaves, expecting her daughter to follow her, but when she looks back and goes back to find her, she's gone. Lana goes around the library to find her, but no matter where she looks, she can't seem to find her daughter. She starts to panic now and starts to call out her name, can't find her, so she checks the security footage with the police. That's when she sees Benny following her daughter, making her panic even more. She then gets a call from her husband and tells him that she's lost their daughter, but he tells her that she is with him. Lana is relieved, but continues to watch Benny on the camera, hangs up the phone, and tells the cops that her daughter is safe. Later at lunch, they talk about losing her daughter, but she is just happy everything is fine. Later, in bed, Lana hears some knocking downstairs and decides to check it out. She shouts, but the knocking doesn't stop. Turns out it was just the wind pushing the unlocked door. As the movie movie ends, Lana fantasizes about Benny when she gets called by her husband from behind and she goes to kiss him, but then she finally realizes something. So she gets in her car, finds Benny, and follows him to finally realize her fantasy. And with that, the movie ends. I hope you enjoyed our video. Watch the next recaps on the screen and don't forget to subscribe for amazing videos. See you in the next one.